Okay, well, we'll go ahead and get started. So grateful for all of you. Good morning. I am Akilah Wallace, the Executive Director of Faith in Texas, and I am really grateful to spend this morning with all of you and engaging in this really fun conversation with Peter Brodsky today. However, I also want to, be honest with all of you and just make note that this week has been rough. Um, everyone is very much aware of the outcomes that have come out of the Breonna Taylor um, case up in Louisville, Kentucky. Those of you who are following the City of Dallas budget processes and the final decisions that were made on this week. And those of you who are aware of organizations and Black women-led organizations and so many amazing and brilliant people who have been working tirelessly to lift up the voices of those most directly impacted by systems of mass incarceration and unjust policing here in our city, and just seeing the outcome of our elected officials and decision makers and where their priorities lied, and just more so the ways in which they, may or may not have truly listened to the recommendations that came out of the lived experiences of our Dallas residents, as well as for those of us in the Black church here locally. We had received, troubling news. And so just the last week has been heavy. But overall, I will say that I'm grateful for Faith in Texas. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to work with such amazing individuals, congregations, clergy, and people who are deeply rooted in their faith, their spirituality, their faith traditions, and the ways that it helps to support them through moments of success and celebration, but also how it carries us through seasons such as 2020 as a whole, as we've been trying our best to navigate through a unprecedented pandemic, an uprising of the Black Lives Matter movement, as well as, just a very traumatic and, weighty election season here, but grace be to God. And so I also want to thank, everyone who contributes to this beloved community that we seek to build and are continuing to build with people of many faiths and backgrounds. And each of you and your contributions to this movement are greatly appreciated. And I thank you for taking this journey with us. I know we have a couple new friends and some who are close to us, but however, I just want to make sure, we share just a little bit about Faith in Texas before diving into our conversation and hearing from our speakers. It's important to note that Faith in Texas is a nonpartisan, multiracial, multi-faith grassroots movement of people united in values who are working together to achieve economic, racial, and social justice for all. We are Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Unitarian, Universalist, and believers in humanity. We are people of diverse races, faith, socioeconomic backgrounds, and professions. Ultimately, we are your family, friends, neighbors, and community. We envision a world in which economic, racial, and social equity enable everyone to live in complete liberation, to pursue their divine purpose, and participate fully in the systems and processes that govern our lives. We recognize that some of the greatest threats to our vision are oppression and suppression, but most commonly manifested in inequitable systems of white supremacy, capitalism, and racism, rooted in the values of dehumanization, fear, and belief in false narratives. However, to ultimately overcome these threats, Faith in Texas is building a multicultural, directly impacted-led movement with faith and race at the center of our work. We are forging a new social identity that bridges divides and values equity, interconnectedness, and integrity over party affiliation. And we do this by engaging people, communities, and voters through community organizing, civic engagements, and leadership development. to create pathways of opportunity for all Texans to thrive. Ultimately, we seek to affect change at the local and state levels, and we aim to name the lies and false narratives, build broad coalitions, demand accountability and transparency from our public systems and elected officials, develop a new generation of community leaders and elected officials to establish, protect, and promote community-centered issues, policies, and systems, and we pursue and promote grassroots funding. And we do this through policy campaigns and integrated voter engagement, leadership development and faith formation, deep listening and research, public action and civil disobedience, as well as through storytelling and strategic communications. It is my profound pleasure and honor to be able to serve with this distinguished organization that centers the voices of those who often are not heard, allowing their thoughts and ideas and imagination to create opportunities for all of us to come together, create bridges and connectivity, and ultimately working towards the beloved community that we envision. And so on this morning, we have two speakers, and we'll be starting with Derek Avery. Derek Avery has been volunteering with Faith in Texas for several years. Him and his wife, Bianca Avery, and even their 3 children have been a part of this movement with us. Derek serves on our board of directors and is the CEO of Core Holdings, a local development company. Derek, I invite you to please, share a little bit of your story and what brought you to become, you and your family, to become engaged with Faith in Texas, as we prepare to just have a wonderful Friday morning together. So Derek, thank you.
Thank you, Akilah. I appreciate the introduction. Can you hear me fine? Okay, great. I appreciate everyone taking the time to jump on the call. And, Faith in Texas is really near and dear to my heart, only because it was one of the things that, for me, I was looking for, and it filled that space of bridging faith and bridging social action for me and my family, because that was one of the things that we put as a high priority for the things that we wanted to be involved in. And I remember how I got introduced was I was actually at church at Concord, and I met Brittany White, and all I knew is that she was really, really intense. And, she was talking about some of the cash bail system. And I said, I know plenty of people who have been directly impacted by that. I think most people can reach out and touch someone that was directly impacted by cash bail. And for me, I dug deeper into it, and I went home and I told my wife, and I said, one, this organization, Faith in Texas, is really doing actual work. It's not lip service, it's actual work. And that's what we were really attracted to from the very beginning, because, I see a lot of talking, but I don't see a lot of action, as the norm. And so for me, seeing the direct action. So one of the first things that, we started doing was we volunteered with the Live Free campaign and started working on the bailouts. And it was interesting meeting people when you're up till 3 a.m. at at Loose Derrick, and you're literally bailing people out and bailing moms out on Mother's Day so that they can be with their children. And then you start understanding that this is not an issue of someone being, aggressive. It's literally they're there because they didn't have the money. And that kept sticking out to me, that how unjust that system was. And so seeing that and digging into it, we started really understanding, well, what's the higher level? And then learning more with our volunteering, we were like, okay, well, the DA has a lot to say about cash bail. The sheriff has a lot to say about incarceration. So we started working on the DA forms at the time, and that really showed me the political power that was embedded in faith in Texas. And for my family, one thing for me is I always want my kids to see what we're actually doing. A lot of times we don't engage our children in maybe what we do for work. I know we keep those things separate, but when it comes to faith in Texas, I wanted them to see that there are people of faith that are about action. And for me, it did two things for them. It shows them what we're doing, and it answers the question. We talk about historic times, where would we be? And for me, that was a big question of mine that I always had, for my elders. I said, well, where were you all when, these things were happening, when Dr. King was marching in the street? What were you guys doing? And it's not a question to judge them if they weren't a part of it, but it is, for me, I couldn't look my children in the eye, or their children in the eye, if I'm, in my 60s or 70s, and, they come and ask me, well, where were you when you heard the Mike Brown verdict? Where were you when, the verdict for Breonna Taylor came out? What were you guys doing to fix that? And so for me, partnering with Faith in Texas is one of the big things where I said, this is where we can directly be involved. We can take what skill sets that we have and put that into action. And that's pretty much the gist of my story for Faith in Texas. I love every part of it. Akilah is a great leader. I really appreciate the focus on, staying connected with the community and staying connected with multiple congregations and bringing multiple faiths together. So really proud of the work, and I love being on the board.
Thank you, Derek. We value and appreciate you and Bianca and the children and your engagement with us, and are so glad that you have chosen to lean in with us and your advocacy in organizing efforts. And thank you for your contributions to our efforts to address mass incarceration and to hold our local officials accountable around policies that are keeping people locked up in cages, and also especially during a pandemic. So thank you, we appreciate you. If you could, we'd like to prepare for our discussion with Peter. So if you could please assist us in introducing him.
Absolutely. So I want to introduce Peter, and I always start with a quick funny story. I won't be long, but we chuckled about it beforehand, and I've met Peter. I serve on another board with Peter's wife, and it was so interesting that I met him, but he didn't remember meeting me. And I said, well, do you remember my face? And he was like, I don't remember faces. And I said, you know what? It's okay. It's okay as long as I said something that jogged your memory. But what I really appreciate about him is that he's very down to earth, and considering someone coming from the private equity world where he's come from, but then making a hard left turn to invest in RedBird Mall, which is a fixture, in the southern sector. To make that shift, a lot of times I don't think that people understand that nuance, because private equity and going straight into real estate development is a very hard left turn. And for him being an experienced investor to take all of his knowledge and bring that there into the southern region is an act of justice, in my opinion. And looking at his track record, he's been successful in all of the endeavors that he's been a part of. And now that he's partnering with Faith in Texas, we're really excited to get some more information. So, Peter Brodsky is a down-to-earth guy, great investor, and now hopefully part of Faith in Texas going forward in a meaningful way. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mr. Peter Brodsky.
Sorry about that.
Peter, you're muted. One moment.
There we go. I think I unmuted and you muted thinking you were unmuting, or vice versa. Anyway, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you, Derek. I'm going to stare real hard at your face, but there's something about the way my brain works is I'm terrible at them. So I always warn people because I've tried to fix it and I can't. But I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to people about a topic that I feel real strongly about. And I also want to give a particular shout out to my clergy, Rabbi Stern and Rabbi Robbins, who I see on the call, and they're really their leadership at our Temple Emmanuel, is a guide for our family about the right way to pursue social justice in the city and in the world.
Well, thank you. And yes, we welcome all of our clergy and friends who are here with us. And so I know everyone is eager to hear from you, Peter. So we'll go ahead and jump right into this lively discussion. So first, please briefly share with everyone a little bit about your upbringing and how it has shaped your perspective on justice issues in America.
Well, you know, I had a very, very privileged upbringing. I grew up in a household with two college-educated parents. All of their parents were college-educated. My father was a New York City attorney, and I would say that I didn't grow up, particularly aware of social issues. My parents were, active in politics. They were, they were good people, but I can't say that I was raised with, with a particular awareness of some of the issues that have become a focus of my work today. But I will say that I was raised with a very particular understanding that I was a lucky person. And I think often of my grandfather, who was a very successful economist and investor, author. And I asked him once what was the key to his success. And he went through a litany of things in his life, none of which had really anything to do with him. Starting with being born at the right time, being born white, being born to well-to-do parents, being given a free education, beginning his career after World War II, when if you were a white man with an Ivy League degree, it was frankly not that hard to do well. And he went on through his whole life, and he was really one of the most brilliant people that I ever had met, that I ever have met, but he didn't attribute his success to himself. And I know perfectly well that he worked very hard and he was very smart, but he really was tuned in to the gifts that he'd been given. And I will say that as I get older, I think more and more about that, about the gifts that I've been given, the gifts that my children have been given, that really they had nothing to do with and are benefiting from. And that drives me to try to ensure that every child is given those opportunities.
Wow, that's wonderful. And just the recognition of the privilege.
Well, one thing you can say about being a New York Jew is that we're very self-aware. I've been in therapy since I was 11. And so my wife calls me the 6'1" Woody Allen. But I think self-awareness is very key. Because if you're not aware of your issues, you can't ever fix them.
Very true. And I wish I was able to, my family knew that I possibly needed that type of services back when I was young. It didn't even occur to us until I was an adult. And even still, there was the cultural issues, even with, being a Black woman and a Christian, where it was like, Mom, I think I'm going to a therapist. And it was like, why? You just need to go seek God. You just need to read the Bible more. You're not reading your scriptures enough. So I just in hearing that was a part of the process with the self-awareness is good to hear. And I lean into the ways that all of us can be ensuring that we're doing that for ourselves and our families. So I want to bring up that one of the kind of almost embarrassing moments, but it worked out for our good. That following the Faith in Texas pilgrimage for Black Lives, that was back on June 19th, I learned that you and your wife, Lel, were in attendance. I mean, there were hundreds there, so I hated I didn't see you that day. However, I was really elated and honored knowing that your family was there with Faith in Texas and so many others who were standing in solidarity of so many different issues and Black people during a time when protests were continuing throughout the summer. But it's important, for me, to hear and for everyone to hear, please share how you learned about the event, what compels you to attend, and the impact the experience had on you and your family.
Well, how I learned about the event is how I learn about most things in life, which is through my wife, Lael. She learned about the event. And, for us, there comes a time where you can't sit still about an issue. And I think for a lot of Americans, the murder of George Floyd was that moment. It really shouldn't have to have taken something that was so graphic and so undeniable and irrefutable, but it did take that. And even though my wife and I have been very, very aware of issues of race for a long time, this was a moment where if there were going to be protests and there was going to be an opportunity to stand up and be counted, this summer was it. And I think we both felt and feel a responsibility as white people to participate, because if it is just Black people protesting, it's too easy for the rest of society to blow it off or to dismiss it in some way. And so I think it is a particular responsibility of people who are not Black to stand up and publicly recognize the validity of the cause and the validity of the claims, and anger and sorrow and defiance about what's happening. And so we wanted to stand up and be counted. We were happy to run into Rabbi Stern's wife, Rabbi Nancy Kasten, there. And it really was a very multiracial, multi-faith crowd, which was very heartening. And it was a very moving event, because you think a lot, but there's always more to learn. And blissful ignorance is no longer an acceptable excuse for ignoring society's problems. And the graphic image of the description of a Black man being pulled out of a second-story window from the courthouse and dragged to his death was very shocking, not surprising, unfortunately, but shocking. And then the speeches that were given by people whose lives had been irreparably harmed by police, by law enforcement, the law enforcement's approach to the Black community were very eye-opening, and I think everybody needs to continue to have their eyes opened.
Yeah, agreed. And I appreciate your quote and your sentiments around blissful ignorance is no longer an excuse. And that is important, and also lift up in the ways that, for those, especially our white brothers and sisters who are, lean in, wanting to learn more about these issues and get a better understanding to put the burden of some of the burden, of learning more and more deeply on yourselves, and Googling, finding great articles. There's so many recommended books to lean into, but I do know that, often the burden that some of your Black friends and colleagues, may experience in the ways that, they're asked or tasked to kind of provide references and direction, can be tasking on us, and traumatic as well. But
Yeah.
yes.
I've been told by several friends, it's not my job to educate you about these issues. That's not my job. And that's also been enlightening, because I think a lot of people who are well-meaning in this at this time have been, calling up all their Black friends to express either solidarity or to learn more. And I think there has to be a next level of acknowledgement and understanding that that in and of itself is burdensome, and not their responsibility. This is a problem that was created by white people, and it's only going to be solved if white people have the resolve to solve it. It can't be done without that.
Is it okay if I say amen? That was, yes, that is very much facts. And also I want to lift up that, I know I've referenced, seeking out information on your own, but, please know that, Faith in Texas is a resource, and we do, create opportunities and ways for those who may, be seeking out information or, clarity, or just the opportunity to bridge and build relationships, to check our emails, follow us on social media, and just reach out to me directly. If you are just interested in how do I become further engaged, how do I, get clearer and more knowledgeable. We have resources by way of us locally, as well as by way of our Faith in Action National Network. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us as well. And so, Peter, you also, have referenced and lifted up something very important to you, and that is your faith. So how does your faith inform and or motivate your work?
Well, there's a lot of different answers to that. I think everyone has their own conception of what God is. To me, God is not, a person sitting up in heaven controlling everything, but God is a force that causes us to try to be our best selves. And so in order to do that, that drives a lot of actions. The other thing is particular to the Jewish faith, which is this concept that Rabbi Robbins and Rabbi Stern talk about all the time, which is tikkun olam, which means to repair the world. And every step of a Jewish education, from your first grade class at Hebrew school, where you have your tzedakah box, where you're supposed to put money away for charity, to a project you have to do for your bar bat mitzvah that's about giving back, to all sorts of projects. The temple has a big affiliation with Vickery Meadow Food Pantry. Everything in our faith, at least the way we practice it, is about repairing the world. And so that's really the role that faith plays for our family. Is, we're not the most observant people religiously. We don't keep kosher, but that aspect of the faith is very deeply rooted for our family.
Well, thank you for sharing. And I just learned a little more about the Jewish faith just through those brief remarks. So thank you, and appreciate our various covenant partners from the Jewish faith who engage with us, Temple Emmanuel, and many others. So thank you for bringing your truth, your traditions, your beliefs in this space, so that all of us can be learning from one another, and possibly even taking on some new traditions that we can fold into our own. So that's good to hear. Definitely, the centering of, wanting to repair the world. I love that.
Yeah.
Many people know you as the owner and co-developer of Reimagine RedBird, a huge undertaking to redevelop RedBird Mall and its surrounding areas. There are plans for housing, green space, entertainment, and much more. However, I'll be honest, I've talked to people and those who live in communities, surrounding communities, and just in Dallas in general, and predominantly Black communities. And they're concerned about the potential for gentrification. Mm-hmm. What specific efforts have you made to protect the interests of Black people who predominantly live, work, worship, and patronize the RedBird community? As well as how do you plan to include and uplift their needs as redevelopment continues and ensure their voices are heard?
Well, it's a great question. And you might imagine it's not the first time I've ever had to answer it. The first thing I want to start off with is a vocabulary exercise, which is, what do we mean by gentrification? I believe, based on lots and lots of conversations with folks in the community, that what gentrificate, the bad word gentrification means essentially the development of an area in such a way that it is no longer there for the people who have been in the area. It is there for other people who then come in and displace the people who were in the area. And I think it's safe to say that Trinity Groves, formerly West Dallas, is a perfect example of gentrification. That all of that booming development, which is terrific for the city's tax base, has not been terrific for that community, who have lived there for a long time. So is that what you're meaning by gentrification, Akilah?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Okay. Because the other side of gentrification is, things that the city actually wants, which is things like increasing the tax base. It's a question of how you do it. So the first thing I need to say is that the entire RedBird project is rooted in a belief. And it's a core belief. And if you don't have this belief, then you can't be part of the RedBird team. And the belief is that the people who live in the area deserve high quality amenities, deserve and have plenty of money to pay for them. This is not a charitable exercise. This is a for-profit investment, but it is a for-profit investment that I only pursued because the way I decided that was the best way to make it profitable was to pursue a very positive event for folks in the community. I wouldn't have wanted to have anything to do with it if it was going to be a displacing event. So what are the issues? So how do you do that? I mean, the flip but true answer is that there's nobody living at RedBird Mall. And so we're not displacing anyone by redeveloping it. But that's an overly simplified answer, because the hope is that it spurs more redevelopment elsewhere and causes people to be priced out of the community. The answer is that you try to lift up the community while also providing these amenities. And you also have a more expansive definition of what an amenity is. An amenity is not just a nice restaurant, though we want those. It's not just a, great bowling alley or trampoline park or movie theater, if we can ever go back to those things, to take your kids. But it is also healthcare. Healthcare is a critical amenity that is sorely, sorely lacking in Southern Dallas. Just as before we opened our Starbucks, there wasn't a freestanding Starbucks in the 208 square miles of Southern Dallas, and now there is. There also has historically been only one hospital in Southern Dallas. And you think about how many hospitals are in North Dallas, it's 5 or 6 different hospital groups, to say nothing of different locations. So we're going to have 200,000 square feet of clinics by UT Southwestern and Children's in Parkland, so that residents of the community can benefit from a soup to nuts array of medical services, from free to private pay, from primary to mental health, to pediatrics, to cancer treatments. That lifts people up. And those facilities are specifically for the people who live in this community. Before deciding on their programs, each of the hospital groups held a lot of different community meetings to hear from the community what they needed. And they did a lot of research about what it was that was lacking. The second thing is jobs. So one of the big issues with Southern Dallas employment is a very simple logistical issue, which is that there are almost no office buildings in this area. And by this area, I mean the 208 square miles south of I-30, which is an area bigger than Atlanta. And I think you can fit Boston, Philly, and another one in there. I mean, it's a huge area. And Southern Dallas has between 5 and 10% of the office space in the city of Dallas, but has 40% of the population and 54% of the land. So what does that mean? It's harder for people to get to work. If you're lucky enough to have a car, you're driving a long distance. And if you don't have a car, you're spending hours on the DART bus to get out to Frisco or Richardson or Las Colinas. So the thought is that by creating workspaces at RedBird, we're going to be lifting the income and improving the lifestyle of the people in the community, so that they then have the time and the resources to go enjoy that restaurant. The last thing is that, the first housing development that we're doing, and we're not actually developing it, we sold it to a residential developer, but it's an affordable housing development, but it is a Class A amenity. So it is the only structured parking garage apartment building in the area. Granite countertops. My methodology for picking the developer was, if my wife threw me out of the house, would I live in this place? Fortunately, she's not going to, and so I won't have to, but I would, because it's going to be quite nice. But 70% of it is going to be reserved for folks earning about $50,000 a year. And so again, now we've got, by the end of 2021, when all of our workspaces are open, we'll have 1,500 to 2,000 people working at RedBird every day. And many of them will be able to live in this apartment building. So those are some of the things that we're doing to ensure that this development lifts everybody up, and that there is something for everybody. Some folks want to spend $5 on a cup of coffee. I can tell you from the line around the block to get into this Starbucks, a lot of people in this area are very happy to spend $5 for a cup of coffee. Some folks either don't want to or don't have the money to do so. And so there are other things there so that everyone in the community is welcome. Even if they don't have to go to the doctor, there's going to be a green space out for people to enjoy. There's job training programs for people to advance, advance their lives. We're trying to make sure that everybody has a reason to be there. And the reasons, there are some philosophical reasons why we want to do that, but it also makes good economic sense, because the whole thesis of this investment is that this is an unserved market. There are people here whose needs and commercial desires are not being met. And that is both wrong socially and stupid economically. And so we're trying to address both of those things. In this is a case where inclusivity actually makes financial sense, And hopefully it will prove to others that most of the time, inclusivity makes financial sense.
Well, I am really grateful to hear, I mean, the extensiveness of your, you and your team and y'all's thoughtfulness around, especially expanding the definition of high value amenities. Hearing about the hospital systems and their presence is incredible. I mean, I live here in DeSoto and primarily do everything in the southern sector. And yeah, there are limited options for a variety of services. And definitely the point about the office buildings, I've talked about that recently to people, and they're like, no, for real, think about it. The only like kind of tall structure is the Bank of Texas building, I think, right there.
The B of A Tower in North Oak
Yeah,
Cliff. That is it. Then there's like a 3-story Wells Fargo building just north of the mall. And I can't name another office building.
No, there aren't any really. You know, there's an expectation that, you know, folks should only have access to, you know, many of the logistics, you know, companies that are down here, the warehouses, which are, you know, it's great to have a variety of jobs. But again, the key word is variety. And so, yeah, it's important that we have more opportunities. I love hearing about Chime and, you know, they have hired over 1,000 people from the community and paying them livable wages, which is really important. So thank you, you know, for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me say also, like, I was absolutely adamant that there would not be a call center at RedBird, because all I kept hearing was warehouse call center, warehouse call center. And I didn't, you know, everything we're doing, we're trying to be uplifting and surprising to sort of to North Dallas people, surprising in the level of quality, surprising in the types of jobs. But when I met Mark and Shelley Wilson, who own Chime, I knew they had to be a part of the development because they are so committed to the community, to living wages, the fact that they are an African-American owned business, which is meaningful. But, you know, we don't want to just be call centers. We are actively trying to attract, you know, accountants and lawyers and, you know, IT professionals. I don't think we're at the point yet where we're going to get a C-suite, but there should be a big headquarters here, because it's 10 minutes from downtown, it's 20 minutes from Love Field, it's 25 minutes from DFW, and the demographics of the population within commuting distance of 67 and 20, where RedBird is, are almost identical in terms of education and workforce capabilities as LBJ and 75. So, and you don't have any problems convincing people to put an office at LBJ and 75. And so ultimately there shouldn't be any problem convincing people to do it here. But what I've learned is you got to walk before you run. And so we've got standards, and the standards are professional, white collar, you know, good paying jobs in the area. And then we'll grow from there. I'm going to disappear from the screen for a sec. I have to plug my computer in or I'll lose juice. It'll be
not a problem. I know we have a few more minutes, and I see that we have a question from one of our participants. And so I want to make sure to, before I go to my next question that is addressed. Yvonne Jones asks, how is education being addressed in the RedBird Mall area?
Well, we don't have a lot of education uses at RedBird now. We do have a small outpost of Jarvis Christian College. Their Dallas campus, they have about 6,000 square feet. I think it's about 4 or 5 classrooms, and they're located here. We have tried over time to bring in the community college district or UNT Dallas, just on the theory that you have to meet people where they are. rather than getting people to go to a campus, to bring the campus into the community. We haven't been successful in doing that yet. We're not going to be putting a charter school or a Dallas ISD school on at RedBird. It just doesn't fit in with the plan. There are lots of those already. So I would say in terms of pre-K-12, RedBird really is not a part of any of those efforts. We would like to bring more higher ed certifications, certification programs, job training programs, things like that into the development, both as a way to attract people and again, as a way to make sure that this development lifts all boats.
Thank you. What advice do you have for other business leaders who are conflicted or concerned about Black people and our demands for equitable economic opportunities, increased social services like job programs for formerly incarcerated residents, and accountability for police who recklessly murder Black people, and the dismantling of white supremacist systems within government?
This is specifically for business people or just people in general?
Business leaders, specifically.
Well, I think, I'll digress for a sec. 11 years ago, I did a Leadership Dallas class, and it was back when D.A. Crusoe was a judge. And he came and spoke to our class about his divert court, which was an innovative way to keep folks out of jail and prison for drug charges, to get them help and to keep them out of the criminal justice system. And it was a great program. And what he said was, this program is the right thing to do, but the way you actually get it done is to make people understand that it's less expensive than incarcerating people. And unfortunately, it being the right thing to do is not usually a motivator for business. And it's frankly not always a motivator for individuals. At the end of the day, a lot of decisions come down to dollars and cents. And so for my part, if trying to convince other business people, it's because it makes financial sense. You've got an entire sector of society that is being excluded from things, and there are markets to be addressed. And ultimately, if we're going to be a thriving city, we can't, first of all, we're spending a huge amount on the police. And I'm not an expert on this, but I'm quite certain that there is a very good economic justification for investing more in prevention and helping people than in punishing people and locking them up later. That's got to be much more expensive. So there's all sorts of arguments that you can use. And, in terms of people being murdered, there you just have to appeal to people's humanity. And I think you also have to always remind people that the situation that African Americans find themselves in America is not of their making. Nobody decided that they wanted to live in poverty. Nobody decided that they wanted to be incarcerated at dramatically higher rates than other people. Those are systems that have been imposed on people through very carefully, and I might add, very skillfully crafted laws and societal norms. And that has cost all of us. And if it doesn't get fixed, eventually there's going to be some kind of breaking point where there's, real unrest, which again, not good for business. So personally, for me, the moral arguments are very compelling, but there's clearly a good business argument. Otherwise, you wouldn't be having major corporations get on board with the Black Lives Matter movement. And that seems to finally be happening.
Yeah, no, sorry. It's taking a moment to just kind of process that. Yeah, that is all great advice, and I'm hoping that as we share some of these talking points, that others will lean into it. And I know that you've already been engaging in a variety of conversations with business leaders, government leaders, and community leaders around these really timely and important issues. And I appreciate just even your personal passion and commitment to advocating and speaking up on behalf of Black people that you have your own personal relationship with. I truly recognize this isn't just about business, that you have your own relationships with many of us in the community. And so thank you for advocating and using your platform and resources to really push and fight for the needs that we have. And thank you. Yeah, really. Just one last question as we prepare to wrap up. Just really briefly, Peter, if you could share what you believe are the biggest obstacles we must overcome to truly create a just, equitable, and thriving society for all people. And what role do you see yourself playing in making this vision a reality?
Well, I think the first thing we have to, I really think that there's two things. And unfortunately, as I said earlier, white people caused this problem, and white people have to be the ones to change to fix the problem. Otherwise, nothing's going to change. And I think the two things that have to happen is that there has to be a full acknowledgement of the hurt, of the damage. There has to be a full acknowledgement. The word reparations is so loaded, and my mind begins to hurt when I think about how you'd even calculate that. But at the very least, there has to be a general acceptance that Robert E. Lee did bad things and is not someone to put on a pedestal. That redlining did occur. That discrimination does occur and has caused serious financial, psychological, and emotional damage over centuries. Even the basics of, slavery was a violent, horrible experience. I mean, it sounds so stupid to say it, but I don't think that's truly accepted. And I think it's not accepted for the second reason. The second thing that has to change is that I really believe that white people are afraid. And they're afraid of two things. The first is they are afraid that this system will reflect badly on them as a person. I mean, I just remember when Ben Affleck found out on that Henry Louis Gates show that his great grandparents had been slave owners. He tried to hide it. He did. I mean, he was so, I don't know if you remember that incident, but he was so horrified by the thought and was so afraid that it would reflect on him that he lied about it. And to me, that just shows you the level of fear, and I think deep down, shame that white people feel, because people have got to know somewhere in their subconscious that this is not right. And the second thing is that I think white people are afraid of losing the privilege. There's a lot of people that have made a lot of money over generations off this system. This system is working for some very wealthy people who don't want to be told that they were only successful because of white privilege. And I don't believe that that's the only reason, because there's lots of people with white privilege who are totally unsuccessful. But nobody would be where they are today who's been successful without the systems that helped us get there. And then for the people who are suffering, and there's a lot of white people who are suffering in this economy, I think they're afraid of losing what little they have. And they also don't feel like they've been particularly privileged. I think for an out of work, rural Kentuckian right now, this economy is they're not exactly shopping at Tiffany's. So I think we've got to face the truth and then get over the fear. And if I knew how to do that, I don't know how to do that, but I think that's what has to happen. And the only, the truth shall set you free. The only thing that I can think of is continued education and continued chipping away at the rules that continue to hold people back. And as we get to be a more equitable society, I think it becomes easier and easier to tell the truth. I wish it were a snap. I don't think it is a snap, because fear is a powerful thing. I mean, I know this is nonpartisan, so I won't say names, but there are a lot of political leaders right now who stoke fear in order to inspire voting. And I think there's a lot of people that are afraid. And they don't even know they're afraid. At the risk of going 1 minute longer, I got an email the other day from the head of our homeowners association in Preston Hollow. And the email had a couple of bits of news. And then it said, I just want to warn everyone that there is going to be a Black Lives Matter rally led by SMU students this weekend. So I don't think that they'll march into our neighborhood, but I just want everyone to be aware. So I emailed her and said, thanks so much for all you do for our neighborhood. Why did you feel the need to warn people about that? The word warn implies danger. These are a bunch of university students at the premier learning, higher ed institution in our city. What do you think they're going to do? And she emailed back and said, oh, I'm so sorry I offended you. I was just trying to make sure people knew that there might be traffic. And I emailed back again and said, you've never emailed before about the Susan G. Komen, Race for the Cure. And that's actually in our neighborhood, and it causes a lot of traffic. And I didn't get a response. But that woman was afraid. She was afraid. I don't even know if she consciously understood that that's what she was feeling. She just knew she had a need to tell people about it that she didn't feel she needed to tell about Susan G. Komen. That is an issue of not knowing the truth. And I'm glad that I did that, but I'm not looking forward to seeing her at the next neighborhood gathering, I can tell you.
Well, I'm sure she's probably going to be a little uncomfortable when she sees you as well, but that's okay. It takes discomfort and hard, crucial conversations for us to all be able to move forward together. And ultimately, as you said, it's important that we're facing the truth and that we get over the fear. And so thank you, Peter, and all of our guests. Thank you, Derek, for your time, for just sharing your expertise and just the vulnerability of sharing your lived experience. So thank you so much. I ask for all of our guests to, please continue to lean into these conversations with the leaders of faith in Texas and those who represent a variety of different lived experiences as we continue to have political education trainings and other actions where we are calling and leaning into all of you to support us. So please follow us on social media. register to attend some of our upcoming events, as well as please answer some of our calls to action. That does include just even assisting and calling community members to help turn out the vote. That is really important in the ways that people connect their civic engagement and the privilege and ability to cast a vote or ballot in support of people and issues that are meaningful to them. And then lastly, I appreciate, staying with this 5 minutes over, but lastly, we value and appreciate all of you and your generosity as donors to Faith in Texas for sowing seeds to ensure that faith-based organizing continues to grow and sustain through this pandemic and beyond. I welcome the opportunity to meet with each of you individually, and we'll follow up so that we can continue to learn more about your personal interests and ways to further engage with our work and to align with your needs in the ways that you see yourself in this justice movement. And we also, ask that you, consider helping us to sustain for the long term and long-term impact that we seek to have throughout North Texas and beyond by considering becoming a monthly donor to help strengthen our work. But thank you so much for your time, everyone, this Friday. Thank you again, Peter, Derek, and all of you. It is an honor. And so we hope to see you at our next intimate discussion, soon to be announced, and as well as other opportunities to engage with us. So please follow our platform, join the Road to Liberation campaign, and engage your family. And we hope to see you at the polls and just virtually in various spaces. So best to all of you. Have a wonderful and safe weekend. Protect your heart, protect your mind, protect your body and your soul in this season. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.